If you like our stories, please like, comment and subscribe for more. Ava Serrano always walked home the same way after her late shift at the cafe, down the bright streets, past the midnight bus loop, then 2 blocks to her apartment. Safe. Predictable. Quiet. She liked predictable. Predictable didn't break your heart or hold a gun or whisper threats into the dark. But tonight, the bus broke down. The driver apologized, passengers groaned, and Ava stood in the cold November air, staring at the blinking hazard lights while her breath came out in thin clouds. She could wait half an hour for another bus, or take the shortcut behind Vescari's, the upscale Italian restaurant that pretended its back alley didn't smell like old trash and secrets. She pulled her jacket closer. "It's fine," she muttered to herself. 2 minutes in the alley and then I'm home. The wind cut through her like a warning. She ignored it. The moment she stepped into the narrow passage, the city noise faded, swallowed by the brick walls and the heavy darkness. Her footsteps echoed. A puddle splashed. Her heartbeat quickened for reasons she brushed off as nerves. Then she heard it. A low male voice. A groan. Something metallic scraping across cement. She slowed, ears straining. Another voice responded, calm, cold, and horribly familiar. Ava froze. She knew that voice, though she'd never heard it more than a few words at a time. Lorenzo Vale. The man who came into her cafe almost every morning. The one who never smiled, never chatted, never wasted a movement. The one with winter gray eyes and sharp, quiet presence. A man who always left too much tip and looked too tired for someone so young. She'd always wondered what his life was outside those 3-minute interactions. Now she wished she never had. "Last chance," he said, voice level. "Tell me what I need to know." A wheeze of pain answered him. There was a scuffle. A cough. A wet sound she didn't want to imagine. Ava stepped backward, but her heel struck an empty can, sending it rolling across the pavement. The alley went silent. She felt the stillness the way someone feels a gun before seeing it. Then a body hit the ground. Hard. Ava clapped a hand over her mouth. Her pulse hammered so violently she thought she might collapse. She should run. She should scream. She should. A figure turned toward her. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Leather jacket, dark hair, eyes sharp even in the dim alley light. Lorenzo. The man from the cafe. Only this wasn't the version of him who ordered Americanos and avoided eye contact. This was the version the world whispered about without daring to say his name too loudly. An enforcer. A killer. A man whose reputation walked into a room before he did. And now his gun was pointed at her. Ava's breath hitched. Her body locked up. She didn't blink, couldn't. Her gaze flicked briefly to the man on the ground. No movement. No sound. Oh God. Lorenzo's expression didn't shift. Not anger. Not surprise. Something colder. Calculating. "Ava," he said quietly. Her heart stopped. He knew her name. Then again, she'd worn a name tag every day for a year. But hearing it now, here, felt like a death sentence. "Please," she whispered. It wasn't a plan. It wasn't even a thought. Just instinct. Lorenzo's finger moved to the trigger. Her knees nearly buckled. He didn't fire. Instead, he clicked something. The safety. It was on. The whole time. He hadn't even tried to shoot her. They stared at each other, the alley holding its breath with them. Then headlights spilled across the walls, fast. A second car entered the alley from the opposite side. Doors slammed. Two silhouettes stepped out, voices sharp. Who's that? Did she see? Ava's stomach twisted. They saw her. They saw everything. She took one step backward, trembling. Lorenzo didn't look at her again. His voice was barely audible, just a breath of sound meant only for her. Run, Ava ran. Her shoes pounded the pavement, lungs burning. She didn't look back, didn't dare. She didn't know if Lorenzo was following her, if the other men were chasing her, if this was seconds from ending in a bullet. By the time she reached the end of the alley, her vision blurred with terror and adrenaline, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Her life had just changed forever. And someone, maybe all of them, wanted her dead before sunrise. Lorenzo Vale washed the blood off his hands in the cramped bathroom behind Vescari's, watching the red swirl into pink, then clear, before disappearing down the drain. He'd killed people before. Too many to count. Too many to forget. But he couldn't stop seeing her. Ava. Standing in the alley, eyes wide and shining with terror. Mouth trembling as she whispered one word, "Please," he shut off the tap. His reflection in the cracked mirror stared back at him, harsh jawline, split lip, dark eyes that looked almost black in the dim light. The face people feared. The face parents warned their kids to avoid. The face she served coffee to every morning like it was nothing. He flexed his hand once, opening and closing his fingers. They still remembered the weight of the gun, the way the trigger had pressed against his skin. And the click. The empty, harmless click. He'd flicked the safety off after she ran. Not before. He hadn't miscalculated. He hadn't hesitated. He'd known what he was doing. A knock sounded at the bathroom door. 3 sharp raps. Lorenzo, it was Nico, one of the senior soldiers. The boss wants you, now. Yeah, Lorenzo said. His voice came out steady. It always did. I'm coming. He dried his hands on a thin paper towel, tossed it, and walked out. The back room of Vescari's didn't match the white tablecloth elegance of the dining area. Out front, chandeliers, soft music, expensive wine. Back here, bare walls, mismatched chairs, a single heavy table scarred with years of fists, glasses, and bad decisions. Marco Vescari sat at the head of it. Short, solid, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that couldn't hide the weight he carried in this city. His hair was salt and pepper, slicked back. His eyes were small and dark, sharp enough to cut through lies before they were spoken. 2 men flanked him. Nico on the right. Angelo on the left. Both had seen too much. Both had survived too long. Lorenzo stepped inside. The door shut behind him with a soft, final click. Marco didn't say anything at first. He just looked at Lorenzo. Looked past the calm face, the steady posture, the clean hands. You took care of it? Marco finally asked. The target's dead, Lorenzo said. That much was true. And the girl? The words felt like a concrete block dropping inside his chest. He kept his expression neutral. She ran. Nico shifted. Angelo's jaw tightened. She ran, Marco repeated, like he was tasting the word. He leaned back in his chair. My men tell me they saw a woman at the mouth of the alley. Dark hair. Security uniform. Late 20s. Works at some cafe a few blocks away. He tapped the table with one finger. They say you pointed a gun at her, and then she ran. Lorenzo's heartbeat stayed slow by force. Years of discipline held his features steady. Street was dark, he said. I fired. Might have missed. She didn't get a good look. Silence. Marco's eyes didn't blink. You and I both know people see more than they think they do, especially when they're terrified. He picked up a small, folded napkin from the table and slid it across toward Lorenzo. A faint smudge of ink showed through. Lorenzo didn't move to take it. Marco nodded at the napkin. Go on. Lorenzo reached down and unfolded it. A name stared up at him. Ava Serrano. 6:30 to 3:30 shifts, most days. Lives 5 stops down the bus route. Last seen, the alley. Lorenzo's throat went tight. Marco folded his hands. You know what I like about you, Lorenzo? He asked conversationally. You don't make mistakes. You don't hesitate. You don't improvise. He tilted his head. Tonight feels like improvising. Lorenzo forced his fingers not to curl around the paper too tightly. I'll take care of it. Marco watched him, weighing every syllable, every breath. No, he said softly. You had your chance to take care of it. When she was 6 feet away and scared out of her mind, you should have dropped her right there. His voice remained calm, but something dangerous threaded through it. So now we have a problem. A witness. A potential leak. A girl who saw you, a body, and our car in an alley that doesn't exist on paper. Angelo chuckled humorlessly. Big problem. Shut up, Marco said mildly, without looking at him. The room felt smaller and smaller. Marco leaned forward, forearms resting on the table. I'm not in the habit of wasting good men, he said. You've done a lot for me, Lorenzo. For this family. You've made other people's problems disappear neatly. Efficiently. Without drama. His gaze sharpened. So here's how I'll be generous. He held up a single finger. 24 hours. The words dropped like a stone. In 24 hours, Marco continued, I want her gone. No noise, no mess, no witnesses. She never existed. This little oversight of yours disappears. He spread his hands. And so does this conversation, and if she doesn't? Nico asked quietly, though everyone in the room knew the answer. Marco smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. If she's still breathing tomorrow night, he said, then she dies. His gaze locked on Lorenzo, cold and unblinking. And so do you, Angelo whistled under his breath. 2 birds, 1 bullet. Lorenzo ignored him. Understood, he said. Marco studied him for a beat longer, like he was waiting for something. A protest. An excuse. A plea. Lorenzo gave him nothing. Finally, Marco nodded once. Good. I'd hate to lose you, Lorenzo. You're my favorite story to tell new recruits. Orphan boy. Nobody's son, until I made you mine. Loyal. Efficient. Not like some of these soft ones. His voice cooled again. Don't make a liar out of me. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. I won't, then go, Marco said. Finish what you started. Lorenzo turned and walked out, feeling 3 sets of eyes boring into his back. The hallway beyond the office felt colder than the alley had. The air smelled like garlic, wine, and faint cleaning chemicals. Laughter drifted from the dining room, oblivious to the death sentences being handed out in the back. He pushed through the rear exit and stepped into the night. The city hummed around him. Neon signs buzzed. Cars hissed past in the wet streets. Somewhere, someone was playing music too loud. Life moved on, unaware that one girl's existence now had a countdown attached to it. 24 hours. He knew what he was supposed to do. The steps were simple. Go to her apartment. Knock, or don't. Get inside. One shot. No witnesses. Clean the scene. Make it look like a robbery, a random act of violence. Walk away. Report back. Live. He could almost feel the gun in his hand already, the familiar weight, the muscle memory. Instead, his mind wouldn't let go of something else. Wait, you forgot your change, months ago. Maybe a year. The first time he really heard her voice. He'd been leaving the cafe, distracted, phone buzzing in his pocket with a message from Nico about a job. Ava had called after him, moving around the counter to hold out a few crumpled bills. 3 seconds. 4 at most. Enough time for a dark sedan to scream past the window a heartbeat later, bullets shredding the spot on the sidewalk he would have been standing on. Glass shattered. People screamed. Lorenzo hit the floor, instincts kicking in. When he looked up, Ava was pressed behind the counter, eyes wide, hand still clenching his change like she was afraid to drop it. He never said thank you. But he started timing his mornings so that he'd be there when she worked. He told himself it was habit. Routine. Convenience. He knew better. She remembered when he looked tired and pulled an extra shot for his coffee without asking. She remembered when his knuckles were cut and slid an extra napkin across the counter, pretending not to notice the blood. She remembered when he didn't come in for 3 days and, when he finally did, said softly, "Rough week." No one else in his world asked if he'd had a rough week unless they were the reason. Ava did. With no angle. No fear. Now the same girl who'd unknowingly saved his life had exactly 24 hours left on hers. Unless he did something very, very stupid. Lorenzo walked toward his car, each step echoing his choices back at him. He could follow orders. Kill her. Survive. Keep his place in the family that had raised him, fed him, armed him. Or he could do the one thing men like him weren't allowed to do. He could care. He unlocked the car and slid behind the wheel but didn't start the engine right away. His phone sat on the passenger seat, screen glowing faintly with new messages. Check-ins. Updates. The world grinding forward. He picked it up and, instead of texting Marco, he opened a map. He typed in her address. The route appeared in blue. 10 minutes if the traffic was light. He stared at it. Then Lorenzo Vale, the man who never hesitated, made a decision that would mark him for death. He started the car. He wasn't going to kill Ava Serrano. He was going to get to her first. And he was going to keep her alive, no matter what it cost. For the first time in his life, Lorenzo wasn't following orders. He was following his heart. Straight into a deadline he probably wouldn't live to see. Ava barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the alley. The body. The gun. Lorenzo's face staring at her like he was caught between duty and something she didn't understand. She showered twice. Scrubbed her hands until they were red. She changed clothes. Sat on the couch. Stood up again. Paced. Her phone buzzed with a notification from the rideshare app. your driver is 2 minutes away, except she hadn't ordered one. She stared at it until it disappeared. Her mind was playing tricks on her. It had to be. At 3:12 a.m., she made a decision. She was calling the police. She grabbed her phone, fingers trembling so hard she nearly dropped it. But before she could swipe, a knock echoed through her apartment. Not gentle. Not hesitant. 3 hard, precise knocks. Her blood ran cold. No one knocked like that. She backed away from the door. "Who is it?" she whispered, even though she didn't want an answer. "Ava," a familiar voice said through the wood. "Open the door." Her knees nearly gave out. "Lorenzo." She stared at the door like it had betrayed her. She could still see him with a gun in his hand, standing over a dead man, and now he was outside her home. "No," she choked out. "Go away, Ava," he said again, tone low, urgent, too calm to be comforting. "Open the door, now." "I'm calling the police." "No, you're not," he said. "If you were going to, you'd have done it already." Her breath hitched. Tears stung her eyes. How did he know her so well? He'd barely said 10 sentences to her in a year of coffee runs. The doorknob rattled. "Ava," he warned, "don't make me break it." That did it. Panic surged. She grabbed a lamp from the side table and held it like a weapon. "I swear, if you try to come in, I'll—" The door burst open. Lorenzo stepped inside like a storm, controlled, fast, inevitable. She swung the lamp with everything she had. It struck his arm with a thud. He grabbed her wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough that the lamp clattered to the floor. "Ava, stop," he said sharply. "Get out," she cried, voice cracking. "Please, just go." "I can't." He kicked the door shut behind him and locked it. She tried to pull away, but he held her steady, breathing hard, not from exertion, but from fear. Real fear. "You have 10 seconds to explain," she said, voice trembling. "Because right now I don't know if you're here to kill me or something worse." "If I wanted to kill you," he said, "you'd already be dead." "Great," she snapped. Very reassuring. He ran a hand through his hair and stepped back, giving her space. His eyes scanned her living room, checking windows, corners, the hallway. His movements were sharp, purposeful. He wasn't alone in his urgency. Danger was hanging on him like a second skin. "They sent someone else after you," he said quietly. "Someone who won't hesitate." Her stomach twisted. "Who sent them?" He looked at her. Really looked. Eyes dark and unguarded. "The Vescari family." The name made her shiver. Everyone knew it. No one said it. "They think you saw too much in the alley tonight." "They're right." He gestured at her coat tossed over a chair. "You need to pack, now." "I'm not going anywhere with you." Her voice cracked halfway through. "You killed someone, I saw." "And if it wasn't me," he interrupted, "it would have been someone who made that man suffer a lot longer before he died." The room fell silent. Ava swallowed hard. "That doesn't make you safe." "No," he said, "it doesn't." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But I'm your only chance at staying alive." Her pulse thundered in her ears. "I don't understand. Why would you help me? Why not just do what they told you?" He hesitated. The first crack in his controlled mask. "Because I couldn't," he said simply. "That's not an answer. You don't want the real answer." "Yes," she shot back. "I do." He exhaled like the truth physically weighed on him. "You remember everything," he said softly. You asked if I wanted a double shot on mornings I hadn't even spoken yet. You noticed when I was bleeding and pretended you didn't. You pulled me out of danger once without ever knowing you did. She blinked. What are you talking about? Months ago, he said, voice low. I walked out of the cafe. You called after me, said I forgot my change. You delayed me 5 seconds. Maybe 6. Her breath caught. A drive-by came right after. If I hadn't stopped, I'd be dead. She stared at him. Not blinking. Not breathing. And ever since that day, he added softly, I haven't been able to forget you. Ava's throat tightened. Her whole world tilted. She took a small step back until her legs hit the couch. You don't know me, she whispered. I know enough, he said. Enough to break every rule I've lived by. The words hung in the air, fragile and catastrophic. A thud echoed against her building's front entrance. Heavy footsteps in the hall. Voices murmuring. Lorenzo's head snapped toward the door. They're early, he muttered under his breath. Damn it, fear punched through her chest. Who's early? She whispered. Angelo's crew, he said. 3 men. Maybe 4. They're here for you. Her vision tunneled. Lorenzo grabbed her shoulders gently but urgently. Ava, look at me, she did. We need to leave right now, he said. And I need you to trust me, even if you don't want to. If they get in here, you don't survive. I do. You don't. Her heart pounded so hard she felt it in her teeth. But, no, he said, firm but strangely gentle. No more time, he pulled a black blindfold from his jacket. What is that? She gasped. It's so you can't expose where I take you, he said. If they catch you later, you can't give up the location, she hesitated, trembling. He held the blindfold open. Ava, please, the please broke her. She nodded. He tied it securely behind her head, checking it wasn't too tight. Hold on to me, he whispered. She did. He led her through the apartment, guiding her steps with startling care. He pressed one finger to her lips to keep her silent as the voices outside the door grew louder. Then he slipped her out the fire escape, helping her climb down the metal stairs as quietly as possible. Only when they ducked behind a dumpster and the men stormed into her apartment above did she realize her old life was over. And whatever came next depended entirely on the dangerous, conflicted man pulling her into the night. Ava woke to the sound of a refrigerator humming and a distant car passing somewhere she couldn't see. For a second, she didn't remember where she was. The surface beneath her was too hard to be her bed. The air smelled faintly of dust, old wood, and something metallic. A draft slipped under her sleeves. Her head throbbed dully, a leftover ache of adrenaline and too little sleep. She opened her eyes. The ceiling above her was low and stained, hairline cracks branching like veins through the plaster. A single light bulb hung bare from a wire, turned off. Weak daylight slipped around the edges of heavy curtains nailed over the windows. She pushed herself up on her elbows. Not her apartment. No pictures, no bookshelves, no plants she forgot to water. Just 4 walls, a sagging couch, a narrow bed shoved against one side, and a small table with 2 mismatched chairs. The safe house. It all came back in a rush. The alley. The gun. Lorenzo at her door. The blindfold. The fire escape. Men inside her apartment while she climbed down the outside of it. She swung her legs over the side of the bed. Her shoes were on the floor, lined up neatly. Someone had taken off her jacket and folded it over the chair. "Morning," the voice came from the corner. She flinched. Lorenzo sat at the small table, chair turned slightly so he could see both her and the door. His jacket was off, revealing a dark shirt rolled up at the forearms. There was a holster at his waistband, gun within easy reach. A steaming mug sat in front of him, and another one on the table closer to her. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. "How long was I out?" she asked, her voice rough. "Couple of hours," he said. "You passed out as soon as we got here." Shock. She bristled. "I didn't pass out. I rested." "1 second you were arguing with me about walking up the stairs," he said mildly. "The next, you were unconscious on the bed." Heat climbed her neck. "That still counts as resting," he almost smiled. "Almost." "Sure." She stood slowly, waiting to see if the floor tilted. It didn't. Her body ached in that tired, hollow way that came after a long shift and a longer night of running for her life. Her eyes landed on the second mug. "Is that for me?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "Figured you'd want coffee. It's not as good as what you make, but it's drinkable." "You drink what I make," she blurted, then winced at herself. Of course he did. He'd been coming to the cafe almost every morning. One corner of his mouth twitched. Religiously, she crossed the room slowly, as if he were a wild animal she might spook. She picked up the mug and sniffed. Just coffee. No weird smell, nothing floating in it. He watched her, reading her suspicion without comment. "I'm not going to drug you," he said quietly. "If I wanted you unconscious, I'd have done it the easy way." "That's your idea of reassurance, isn't it?" she muttered. "It's my idea of honesty." She took a cautious sip. It wasn't terrible. Strong, slightly bitter, but hot. The warmth spread down her throat, grounding her. It made everything feel more real, not less. She looked around. "Where are we?" "An old apartment over a closed print shop," Lorenzo said. "No one's rented it in years. The landlord owes Marco money, so it's been off the books for a while. I use it when things get messy." "You bring a lot of people here?" she asked. He met her gaze. "No, just you." That shouldn't have made her heart skip. But it did. She set the mug down and wrapped her arms around herself. "So what's the plan?" "I stay here until you decide whether you're going to kill me or not." His jaw clenched. "I already decided, right? You're saving me from the people you work for." "That's not confusing at all." He rubbed a hand over his face, as if trying to wipe away exhaustion. "You're alive, aren't you?" "For now," she said. "You said I have 24 hours. "No," he said. "I have 24 hours, there's a difference." She stared at him. "You're seriously telling me your boss gave you a deadline like this is some kind of twisted assignment?" "He doesn't see it that way," Lorenzo said. "To him, it's just cleaning up a mess. I let a witness go. He's giving me a chance to fix it. And if you don't, then I'm a loose end too." He said it calmly, like he was commenting on the weather. But his hand, resting next to his mug, was curled tighter than it should have been. "So your choices are kill me," she said slowly, "or die with me. Pretty much. And you chose, what, door number 3. "I chose the option where you don't end up on a slab somewhere with your family being told it was a random mugging," he said. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." "We?" she repeated. "There is no we. I didn't ask to be dragged into your world." "No," he agreed. "You just walked into the wrong alley. The words stung, even though he didn't say them cruelly. Silence settled between them. The fridge hummed. A pipe somewhere in the wall groaned. "Can't I just go to the police?" she asked eventually. "Tell them what I saw, get protection?" He shook his head. The Vescari family has people on the inside. Cops, lawyers, judges. You walk in there alone, you're signing your own death warrant. Best case, they lose your report. Worst case, they call Marco before you've even finished your statement. A chill slid down her spine. "So what then?" she whispered. "I hide here forever? Is this my life now?" "No," he said. "Just until I can figure out how to get you out." She eyed him carefully. "And what happens to you if you do?" He looked away for the first time since she'd woken up. "That's not your problem," he said. Her fingers tightened around the mug. "You're risking your life for me. I think that qualifies as my problem." He didn't answer. She took a breath, steadying herself. "You said last night that I pulled you out of danger once, that I saved you." She searched his face. "Is that why you're doing this?" "Partly," he said. "What's the other part?" He lifted his gaze to hers. It was like looking into a storm. "I told you," he said softly. "I haven't been able to forget you." Her pulse stuttered. "We don't even know each other," she protested weakly. "I know enough," he said. "I know you remember small things other people don't. I know you say thank you like you mean it. I know you smile even when you look tired. I know you make the worst mornings bearable." He paused. "I know I started timing my days around those 3 minutes at your counter." Her chest tightened unexpectedly. It was ridiculous. This was insane. This was a man who killed people for a living. He'd dragged her out of her life and dropped her into a safe house like something out of a crime show. And yet, she believed him. Maybe because lying would have sounded prettier. "That's not enough to die for," she whispered. "It is when you've spent your entire life surrounded by people who only see what you can do for them," he said. "You're the only person who ever treated me like I was just some guy who needed coffee." Silence fell again, but it felt different. Heavier. Softer at the edges. Ava sank into the other chair slowly. "What were you before all this?" she asked. "Before Marco, before the family." He leaned back, eyes distant. "Hungry," he said. "Cold, stupid enough to think Marco would save me instead of owning me." She frowned. "He took you in?" "He took in a street rat with good instincts and no one to miss him," Lorenzo said. "Fed him, gave him a bed, put a gun in his hand, and told him all he had to do to keep it was say yes." He tapped his fingers on the table. "I said yes." There was no self-pity in his voice. Just fact. The inevitability of gravity. "How old were you?" she asked softly. 15, he said. A muscle in her jaw twitched. "You were a kid, in my world," he said. "That's when you stop being a kid." She didn't know what to say to that. So she did the only thing that made sense to her. She got up, walked to the tiny kitchen nook, and started opening cabinets. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Looking for food," she said. "If I'm going to process that my barista regular is an ex-street kid turned mafia enforcer with a martyr complex, I'm not doing it on an empty stomach." His lips twitched again. "There's bread in the tin. Peanut butter in the cupboard. Don't trust the cereal, it's older than you." Noted. She found the bread and peanut butter and made 2 sloppy sandwiches, her hands finally having something normal to do. She set one down in front of him. He looked at it like it was a foreign object. I've had worse first dates, she said weakly. He huffed out something that almost sounded like a laugh. They ate in silence for a few minutes. It wasn't comfortable, exactly, but it wasn't hostile. The air felt suspended. Like they were both waiting to see which way it would break. Ava watched him over the rim of her mug. That's when she noticed it. His hand. The one holding the sandwich. It was shaking. Not a lot. Just a faint tremor. Like a small earthquake inside his bones. She set her mug down carefully. You're scared, she said quietly. His eyes flicked to hers, sharper now. What, you're scared, she repeated. You're trying not to be, but you are. He looked away. I'm not scared of them. I didn't say you were, she said. I think you're scared of what you just did, of what it means. He didn't answer. Because if you're willing to defy them for me, she said, there's no going back, is there? His silence was her answer. She swallowed. Lorenzo, what happens to us if they find us here? He looked at her again. This time he didn't try to hide anything. If they find this place, he said slowly, they kill me first. To make an example. And they use you to send a message. A chill crawled down her spine. And if they don't find this place? She asked. Then we buy some time, he said. Long enough for me to figure out a way to get you somewhere they can't reach. And you? He hesitated. I told you, that's not my problem, she finished. Yeah, I heard you the first time, her eyes flashed. Tough, I'm making it my problem. Before he could respond, a sound cut through the room. The low growl of an engine outside. A car. Ava stiffened. Lorenzo was already moving. He stood, grabbed his gun, and crossed to the window in 3 silent strides. He lifted a corner of the heavy curtain just enough to see out. His shoulders went rigid. What is it? She whispered. He held up a hand for silence. Voices drifted up from the street. Muffled. Male. The scrape of shoes on pavement. The car engine cut off. A knock sounded from downstairs. Slow. Controlled. Someone was at the print shop door. Ava's heart lodged in her throat. Lorenzo let the curtain fall back into place. They're early again, he murmured. And this time, she wasn't sure they'd be lucky enough for them to keep walking. The knock echoed through the old print shop like a heartbeat, slow, deliberate, confident. Ava's pulse stuttered. Lorenzo didn't move for a full second. That 1 second felt like a lifetime. Then he turned away from the window and crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbing her wrist. Quiet, he mouthed. He didn't wait for her to nod. He led her toward the back of the apartment, past the tiny kitchenette and into a narrow hallway she hadn't noticed before. The floorboards creaked under their weight, far too loud in the otherwise suffocating silence. Another knock downstairs. Louder this time. Then a voice, muffled but unmistakably male. Check the back entrance. Ava froze. Lorenzo's grip tightened, not painfully, just enough to keep her grounded. He guided her into a tiny pantry-like room at the end of the hall. Shelves held dusty cans, a bag of old flour, and an ancient mop. A sliver of moonlight slipped in through a boarded-up window. Stay here, he whispered. Her hand shot out, grabbing his sleeve. No, you're not going out there alone. His eyes met hers. Dark. Steady. Agitated. I'm not leaving you, I'm just looking. Then I'm going with you. He exhaled sharply, a quiet curse slipping out. But he didn't argue. He pulled her into the pantry with him and closed the door softly behind them. Darkness swallowed them whole. They were pressed so close she could feel the heat of his body through her clothes. His breath brushed her hair. She could feel the rise and fall of his chest, slow and controlled. He was trying to stay calm. Trying for her. Below them, footsteps approached the shop entrance. The creak of wood. A muttered whisper. The doorknob rattled. Ava slapped a hand over her mouth. Lorenzo reached instinctively, sliding his hand over hers, covering it, steadying her trembling fingers. His touch was warm, firm, grounding. Quiet, he breathed into her ear, barely audible. The doorknob rattled again. Then, a loud metallic clang. Locked, a man muttered. Try the side. More footsteps. More searching. Ava pressed back against the shelves, heart thundering. The darkness amplified everything, the scrape of shoes below, the low rumble of a voice, the faint jingle of keys. Lorenzo listened with predator stillness, muscles coiled, hand still over hers. She felt the tension in him, not fear, but readiness. He was prepared to fight. To kill. To die. For her. She swallowed hard behind his hand. The man circled the exterior. One kicked something metal, the lid of a dumpster or a pipe. The sound made her jump. Lorenzo's hand tightened slightly over her mouth, then loosened in reassurance. Relax, he breathed. They haven't found us, but they were close. Too close. A shadow passed over the boarded window. Ava's whole body went rigid. Lorenzo silently wrapped his free arm around her waist and pulled her closer to him, eliminating what little room existed between them. She was pressed against his chest, his heartbeat thumping slow and steady compared to hers. Her fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. He dipped his head toward her ear. They're just checking the perimeter, he whispered. Nothing to panic about, easy for him to say. She nodded anyway, because she trusted him with the terror she didn't know how to carry alone. Minutes passed like hours. Eventually, one of the voices called out, "Nothing here, let's move." Car doors slammed. The engine revved. Tires crunching gravel. Lorenzo waited a full 30 seconds after the sound faded before he moved. He let go of her hand first. Then, slowly, the arm at her waist. Even then, he didn't step back immediately. They stayed close, both frozen by the intensity of what had just happened. She finally pulled in a shaky breath. He did too. You okay? He murmured. I think so, she whispered. Her voice was barely more than air. He reached past her and cracked the pantry door open. A faint line of light sliced across the darkness, illuminating his face, jaw tight, eyes trained, body still on alert. All clear, he said softly. He stepped out first, then held out a hand to help her. She didn't expect the gesture. She didn't expect to take it. But she did. His grip was warm, steady. Much steadier than she felt. They walked back into the main room. He checked the windows, then the front door. Only when every lock was double-checked did he finally turn back to her. You handled that well, he said quietly. She let out a breath that turned into a slightly hysterical laugh. Well, I nearly suffocated trying not to scream. His expression softened. You stayed quiet. You listened. You didn't panic. I panicked, she countered. You didn't fall apart, he said. Most people would have, There was something strange in his voice, admiration, maybe. She looked at him, really looked at him. He was standing near the table again, one hand braced against it, the other rubbing the back of his neck. His hair was slightly mussed. His shirt was wrinkled. A smear of dust streaked his forearm. He didn't look like the controlled, lethal enforcer from the alley. He looked like a man who'd been carrying fear on his shoulders for hours and was only now letting himself feel the weight. Ava stepped closer. "Lorenzo," she said softly, "are you okay?" His jaw worked. His eyes flicked away. "I've had worse nights." "That's not what I asked." He looked at her again, slower this time. More vulnerable. "For a second," he said, voice low, "I thought they'd found us. That I dragged you here just to fail you anyway." "You didn't," she whispered. "I might still," he said. "I'm one man against their whole world." She shook her head. "You're not failing me." Silence stretched between them. Not awkward. Heavy. Charged. He didn't look away. She didn't either. His hand twitched slightly at his side, like he wanted to reach for her and was stopping himself. "You were shaking," she said gently. "In the pantry." His breath caught. "So were you." "Yes," she said. "But I want to know why you were." He didn't answer for a long moment. Then, finally, "Because if they took you," he said, voice barely audible, "I wouldn't survive what came next." Her chest tightened. Something warm, impossible, terrifying bloomed through her. Before she could think, she stepped closer. Before he could step back, she reached out and touched his arm, not grabbing, not clinging. Just touching. Lightly. Carefully. He looked down at her hand like it was the most unexpected thing that had happened to him all night. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For not leaving me alone in there." His voice roughened. "I'll never leave you alone." The promise was dangerous. Reckless. Impossible. But she believed it. Their eyes held for a second too long. A breath too long. The air sharpened. Then he broke the tension, stepping back a fraction. "We need to talk about next steps," he said, clearing his throat. "They're searching buildings now. They're getting desperate. We need to move soon." She nodded, pulse still fluttering from more than just fear. "Okay," she whispered. "Tell me what to do." And for the first time since he'd dragged her out of her apartment, since the alley, since her whole world collapsed in one night, Lorenzo smiled. Small. Real. Barely there. But enough to make her chest ache. Time moved strangely in the safe house. Hours felt like days. The air felt thicker, heavier, charged with something Ava couldn't quite name. After the close call, Lorenzo barely sat. He'd patrol the apartment in slow circles, checking doors, windows, the hallway, then pause, then do it all again. Ava watched him from the couch, her knees pulled against her chest. "You're wearing a groove in the floor," she said softly. He paused mid-step. "Can't sit still. I've noticed." He glanced at her, then looked away, rubbing the back of his neck like he didn't know what to do with his hands. He was different today, tense, restless, wound-tight. She wondered if adrenaline had burned through his composure, leaving him raw and exposed underneath. "A storm's coming," he murmured, nodding toward the covered window. "Weather shift. You can feel it." She listened. The faint rumble of thunder rolled somewhere in the distance. "You're good at noticing small things," she said. He huffed. "I didn't used to be. I learned. When danger's always around you, you get sharp or you die." She lowered her knees. What made you choose sharp? He didn't answer right away. Instead, he sat on the floor a few feet away from her, leaning back against the couch. It was the most relaxed posture he'd taken since they got here. Marco found me when I was 15, he said finally. Sleeping behind a bakery. I hadn't eaten in days. He brought me food, gave me a bed, and told me all I had to do was follow orders. A faint, bitter smile ghosted across his lips. And just like that, I belonged to him. She studied him. The dim light softened his features, made him look younger, more human, less like the dangerous man from the alley. Did you ever want something different? She asked. His jaw worked. At first, I didn't think I had the right to want anything, and now? He hesitated. Then said quietly, now I'm not sure what I want is even possible. Silence thickened. Ava shifted slightly, her shoulder brushing the edge of the couch. Lorenzo, what do you want? He looked up at her, and something in his eyes made her breath catch. Vulnerable. Tired. Yearning. I want out, he said finally. Not just from them. From all of it. I want to stop looking over my shoulder. I want a life that isn't written in blood. But wanting something doesn't make it real. It could, she whispered. He let out a soft laugh, low and disbelieving. Not for people like me. You're helping me, she said. That counts for something. It gets me killed, he corrected. But it still means something. The thunder grumbled again, closer this time. The air shifted. The safe house lights flickered once, then steadied. Ava took a slow breath, watching him, the way his shoulders finally loosened, the way his voice softened in a way she hadn't heard before. She slid off the couch, sitting next to him on the floor. Not touching. Just close enough to share warmth. Tell me something true, she said quietly. He turned his head toward her, brows lifting slightly. Like what? Anything, he thought for a moment. Then, every morning, before I walked into the cafe, I told myself I didn't need to see you. His eyes flicked to hers. And every morning, I failed. A flutter stirred in her chest. Okay, she whispered. My turn, he waited. Every time you came in, she said, you made the whole place feel safer. I used to think it was because you looked like someone who could handle anything. Now I'm realizing I wasn't wrong. Just naive. He swallowed. The lights flickered again. Wind howled suddenly against the building. A loud crack of thunder shook the floorboards. Ava gasped before she could stop herself, her hand flying to her chest. Lorenzo reacted before she finished the breath. In one smooth motion he reached for her, his arm circling her waist, pulling her flush against him. She inhaled sharply at the closeness. His warmth. His scent, smoke, rain, soap. Sorry, she said, breathless. That startled me. I know, he murmured. Storms used to scare me too, she softened. Used to? He hesitated, then confessed, still do. I just hide it better than you. She laughed quietly. The sound seemed to surprise him. They didn't move apart. His arm was still around her. Her hand was still on his chest. The thunder rumbled again, softer this time, but neither of them flinched. Lorenzo, she whispered, you can let go. His voice was barely audible. I know, but he didn't. Their eyes locked. The space between them shrank to nothing. She felt his breath warm on her lips. His gaze dipped, once, to her mouth, then back to her eyes. Slowly. Like he was fighting himself. He leaned in. So did she. Their lips were inches apart, then he stopped. His breath hitched, chest rising and falling against hers. He pulled back just an inch, jaw tight, eyes burning with restraint. "I shouldn't," he whispered. Her heartbeat stuttered. "Why not?" "Because you're here because of me," he said, voice rough. "Because you're scared, and because you don't owe me anything, especially not this." She blinked. "You think I'm doing this because I'm scared?" He didn't answer. "I'm doing this," she said softly, "because you're the only reason I'm still alive, and because I don't feel scared when I'm close to you." That shattered him. His hand lifted, almost touching her cheek, but he stopped himself, fingers trembling in the air between them. "Don't," he said quietly. "If I start, I won't be able to stop." A slow, warm ache spread through her chest. "We're allowed to want things too," she whispered. He closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply, like he was steadying himself against a temptation that could undo everything. When he opened them again, they were darker. Warmer. Torn. A sharp buzz broke through the moment, his phone vibrating on the table. Lorenzo tensed instantly. His arm dropped from around her waist. The spell shattered. He stood and grabbed the phone. The message on the screen was short. Encrypted. Coded. But Ava could read the change in his expression. "What is it?" she asked, rising to her feet. "They think they know the district we're hiding in," he muttered. "We're running out of time." Her heart sank. "What do we do now?" He looked at her, jaw set, something fierce and determined in his eyes. "We get you out," he said. Tonight. The storm outside raged, lightning flashing through the cracks in the boards. Inside, the storm brewing between them was quieter, but just as impossible to ignore. The storm swallowed the city. Rain hammered the roof in relentless sheets, leaking through unseen cracks, drumming against the old metal gutters like an alarm no one could shut off. The safehouse lights flickered once, twice, then steadied, dimmed by shadows that seemed to crawl across the walls. Ava stared out at the boarded window, watching the flashes of lightning brighten the room in quick, violent bursts. Behind her, Lorenzo packed quickly, quietly, moving with that lethal efficiency she had come to recognize too well. He checked the gun. Repacked the ammo. Folded a jacket. Rolled a map. Everything done quickly, decisively. Everything he did to get her out. Not them. Her. "You're not taking enough for yourself," she said, voice barely above the rain. "I'm taking what I need, you're taking nothing." He didn't answer. He zipped the last duffel and slung it over his shoulder. Rain boomed outside like a warning. She stepped in front of him, blocking his path to the door. "Lorenzo, stop." He didn't. He tried to step around her. She didn't move. "Look at me," she said. His jaw clenched. But he looked. And for the first time since the alley, she wished he hadn't, because the look in his eyes was raw. Strained. Haunted. Like a man already halfway gone. "We leave in 15 minutes, he said. "The roads will be empty in the storm. It gives us a window." "Us?" she echoed. "No, you mean me. Just me. That's how it has to be." "No," she said. "No, it doesn't." He set the duffel down harder than necessary. "Ava, you're planning to get me out and then stay behind." Her voice shook. "You're planning to die." He exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "I'm planning to buy us time. There is no us if you're dead." He flinched. The storm roared louder. "Why does my life matter more than yours?" she demanded. "Tell me." He pushed past her. She followed. He moved into the main room. She grabbed his arm. He froze. Ava, he said, voice low, strained, let it go. No, he turned. Slowly. Like it hurt. Lightning flashed across his face, half shadow, half fire. Why am I worth saving? She whispered. He swallowed. Hard. You know why, number. Say it. Thunder cracked overhead. He shut his eyes like he was bracing for impact. When he opened them again, something inside him had broken open. Ava, he stepped closer, voice rough and shaking despite his effort to keep it steady. Because I've killed men for less than the way you look at me, because you say my name like I'm not a monster. Because every morning you gave me 3 minutes of peace in a world made of violence. Because when you called after me that day, when you stopped me for my change, you didn't save my life. His voice dropped to a whisper. You gave me one. Her breath hitched. And when I saw you in that alley, he continued, I didn't see a witness. I saw the only thing in my life that wasn't rotten. The only thing I hadn't ruined yet. He took another step, voice breaking. I chose you knowing it could kill me. Why? She whispered again, tears rising. Why me? He looked at her like it hurt to breathe. Because I want you, he said. More than I've ever wanted anything. The storm didn't shake the room half as violently as those words did. Ava felt her pulse thrum in her throat. Her hands were trembling, but not from fear. From want. Slowly, she reached up and touched his face, her fingertips brushing the edge of his jaw, the stubble rough beneath her skin. He inhaled sharply. Lorenzo, she whispered, look at me. He did. You're not dying for me, she said softly. You're living with me, or none of this matters. His eyes darkened. His breath caught. His restraint, already frayed, snapped like the old boards over the windows under the storm's weight. He reached for her. No hesitation. No distance. No walls. His hands cupped her face, his forehead pressed to hers, his breath trembling against her lips. Ava, he whispered, voice breaking apart. If I start, don't start, she murmured. Stay, that was all he needed. His mouth found hers in a kiss that wasn't gentle, wasn't slow, wasn't anything but pent-up longing and fear and relief crashing all at once. Her hands buried in his hair. His arms wrapped around her waist, lifting her against him as if he'd been fighting the urge for days. The storm outside roared. Wind rattled the window frames. The lights flickered again. None of it mattered. He walked her backward toward the bed, never breaking the kiss. Breathless. Desperate. Hungry in a way that told her he'd starved himself of this for years. Tell me to stop, he whispered against her mouth. She pulled him closer. Don't you dare, his control shattered. He kissed her like he was memorizing her, like he wasn't sure he'd ever get another chance. Her hands slid under his shirt, feeling the warmth of his skin, the tension in his muscles, the heat building between them. Clothes hit the floor in soft sounds. His breath came faster. Hers came uneven. His hands moved slowly at first, careful, reverent, and then with growing certainty as she pulled him closer, answering every hesitant touch with one of her own. The storm dimmed outside, but the one between them only grew. He laid her back on the narrow bed like she was something fragile, precious, dangerous to lose. His forehead brushed hers, breath trembling. If we do this, he whispered, there's no going back. She didn't hesitate. I don't want to go back. His kiss said everything he couldn't. The lights flickered once, then went out entirely. The world went dark. But neither of them reached for the switch. When Ava woke, the storm had quieted to a soft drizzle tapping against the boarded windows. Gray morning light seeped weakly through the cracks, painting the room in pale, uneven shadows. For a moment, she didn't move. She didn't even open her eyes. She felt warmth. A strong arm around her waist. A steady heartbeat against her back. A breath that brushed the back of her neck, slow and even. Lorenzo. He slept lightly, his body curled protectively around hers. Even in sleep, his fingers rested over her stomach like he was afraid she'd slip away if he let go. A smile tugged at her lips, soft, fragile, real. This wasn't supposed to happen. It shouldn't have happened. But it did. And she didn't regret a second of it. She shifted slightly, and his arm instinctively tightened, pulling her closer. His breath caught, half awake, half dreaming. "Morning," he murmured, voice rough with sleep. Her heart warmed. "Morning." He pressed a faint kiss to her shoulder before opening his eyes. When he looked at her, something in him softened, something she hadn't seen fully until now. A kind of quiet awe. Like he couldn't believe she was still there. "You okay?" he asked softly. She nodded. "Are you?" His eyes flicked away for a heartbeat, vulnerability slipping through the cracks. "I shouldn't be," he said. "But, yeah." "With you?" "Yeah." She turned to face him. The sheets shifted, brushing warm skin. He traced a thumb gently across her cheekbone, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. For one fleeting moment, the world shrank to this tiny safe house. To their tangled sheets. To the warmth between them. But reality waited just outside the door. Lorenzo sat up slowly, raking a hand through his hair. "We need to move. The storm gave us cover last night, but it'll make travel harder now. I want to get you out before." His phone buzzed once on the table. Ava felt the shift in him instantly. His whole body tensed. Shoulders rigid. Breath caught halfway through. He reached for the phone. A message. One line. Encrypted. Anonymous. He stared at it for too long. "What is it?" Ava asked, sitting up. He didn't answer. "Lorenzo?" He turned the screen toward her. "Papers ready. Meet now. Use back alley. Alone." Her stomach dropped. "That's good, right? Isn't that your contact?" "It's too soon," he muttered. He said midday at the earliest, so he finished faster. "No." Lorenzo stood, pacing. "He never finishes early." A chill slid down her spine. Meaning it's a lure." His voice was tight. Controlled. Scared in a way she hadn't heard before. "Either he sold me out or they found him." Ava's pulse spiked. "So what do we do?" He grabbed the duffel, slinging it over his shoulder. "We go anyway, but not through the alley. We take the roof, move 2 buildings down, then drop to the street." "Isn't that dangerous?" "Everything's dangerous," he said. She grabbed her jacket, crossing the room fast. "Then let's go." He stopped her with a hand on her arm. She turned, and froze at the look in his eyes. "Ava," he whispered, voice breaking. "Last night, it wasn't a mistake." Her breath caught. "I didn't think it was." He stepped closer. "I needed you to know that. Before we run. Before we fight. Before we die." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. She reached up and kissed him softly, once, gently, grounding him. His breath trembled as he kissed her back. "We're getting out," she murmured. "Both of us." He closed his eyes for a second. "I'm going to try." She grabbed his hand. "We do it together." He squeezed hers, hard, warm, desperate. They moved fast. Lorenzo checked the hallway. Clear. He led her into the stairwell, hand hovering near his gun. They climbed to the second floor, then the third. Rain dripped through cracks in the roof as they pushed open the access door. Wind whipped around them. The rooftop was slick, shimmering with puddles that reflected the gray sky. "Stay close," he said. She nodded, heart hammering. He led her across the rooftop, crouching behind a large ventilation unit. "We jump to the next building," he said. "It's only a 6-foot gap." "Only?" she whispered. He managed a tight smile. "I'll go first, then you jump to me." He stood, bracing himself, and leapt cleanly across the gap. When he landed, he turned and held out his arms. "Your turn." She took 3 steps back. Ran. Jumped. For one terrifying second, she felt the empty air under her. Then his hands caught her. Pulled her against him. Held her tight. "You okay?" he asked breathlessly. She nodded into his chest. Yes. They moved toward the fire escape on the far side of the building. That's when they heard it. A sharp click. Then another. Then, "Don't move." Ava froze. Lorenzo shoved her behind him instantly, body tensing like a shield. 4 men emerged from the stairwell on the roof they'd just left. 2 more stepped from behind an air vent. 1 stood on the fire escape below, blocking their escape route. And then, "Hello, Lorenzo." Marco Vescari stepped into view. Umbrella in hand. Suit dry despite the storm. Calm. Collected. Cruel. Ava's breath hitched. Lorenzo's jaw locked. Marco smiled, cold, like a blade. "You were a little too predictable, boy." Lorenzo shifted subtly, positioning himself fully in front of Ava. "Don't," Marco warned, lifting a hand. "There's nowhere to run." Rain pattered around them. Ava could barely breathe. Her heart pounded so violently she thought she might collapse. "You chose her over me," Marco said simply. "Over the family, over everything." Silence. Lorenzo's voice was low. Steady. "I chose what was right." Marco tilted his head. "No, you chose to die." He nodded once. Hands grabbed Lorenzo from behind, 2 men rushing him from the stairwell. Others swarmed in. He fought, wild and furious, taking down one, elbowing another, but there were too many. Ava screamed as they slammed him to the ground. Someone grabbed her too. She kicked and twisted, nails scraping skin, but a hand clamped over her mouth. Lorenzo roared her name, desperate, furious, animal, but they held him down, wrenching his arms behind him. Marco stepped closer, looking between them with disappointment and amusement mingling in his eyes. "Bring them," he said casually. "They can explain themselves at the warehouse." Lorenzo snapped, "Don't touch her." Marco didn't even glance at him. "If you wanted her unharmed," he said mildly, "you shouldn't have fallen in love with her." Ava's blood ran cold. They were dragged toward the stairs, toward waiting cars, toward whatever came next. Lorenzo's eyes met Ava's as they were forced apart. And the message in his stare was clear. "I'm sorry. I failed you. I'm not done fighting." The warehouse smelled like oil, rust, and old secrets. Ava's knees hit cold concrete as they shoved her down. Her wrists were tied behind her back with rough plastic zip ties that bit into her skin. The room was big and mostly empty, except for a few crates, a metal chair, and the echo of her own breathing. Lorenzo was already there. He was on his knees too, a few feet away, hands bound, blood on his lip and along his brow. They'd hit him on the way in. Hard. He'd tried to shield her even with his hands tied. She'd watched it happen, helpless, fury and fear burning together in her throat. Marco Vescari sat calmly on a chair in front of them, like a king watching a show. A few men hovered nearby, Nico, Angelo, and two others whose faces Ava didn't know but whose eyes were equally hard. The overhead light buzzed faintly, casting everything in a harsh, washed-out glow. Marco folded his hands. "So," he said. "Here we are." Ava swallowed. Her throat was raw. Lorenzo stared straight ahead, jaw clenched, shoulders squared despite the blood dripping from his temple. He looked like someone carved out of stone. Marco studied him. "You know, when I took you in," he said, "I used to tell people you were my best work. From nothing to something. No family name, no connections, just instincts and obedience. You never hesitated. You never questioned. You did the ugly jobs with a clean face." He tilted his head. "What changed?" Lorenzo's voice was rough but steady. "I got tired of being your weapon." Marco smiled thinly. "No, you got attached." His gaze flicked to Ava, appraising. "All this over a girl who pours coffee." Ava's heart pounded, but something inside her hardened. "I'm not just," her voice cracked. She forced it steady. "I'm not just a girl who pours coffee." Marco's eyebrows lifted, amused. "No? What are you then?" She met his eyes. Her body shook, but her voice didn't. "I'm the woman your best man chose over you." The room went still. Nico choked out a quiet, disbelieving laugh. Angelo muttered, "She's got guts." Marco's eyes cooled. "Careful," he said softly. "Courage can be admirable, or it can be very, very stupid." He stood slowly, walking closer. His shoes clicked against the concrete. Ava forced herself not to flinch. Marco stopped in front of Lorenzo first. 24 hours, he said. "I gave you 24 hours to fix your mistake. Instead, you spent them hiding her. Kissing her. Sleeping with her." Ava felt heat rush to her face, humiliation flickering under the fear. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Marco's gaze cut back to her. "Did you think he was different with you?" he asked. "Special? He's done worse things for less reason. You're just another weakness with a prettier face." "He didn't kill me," she said. "That already makes him different." Marco's smile faded. He looked at Lorenzo. "Why?" he asked. "Why her?" Lorenzo's lip was split, blood stained his teeth. He still managed to smile, small, defiant. "Because she's better than all of us," he said. "Especially you." The backhand came fast. Marco's ring split Lorenzo's cheek. His head snapped to the side. Blood spattered the floor. Ava flinched. "Stop." Marco ignored her. "I gave you everything," he hissed. "Food. Shelter. A name. A purpose. You were nothing. And you repay me by choosing this?" He gestured at Ava like she was a stain. Lorenzo turned his head slowly back to face him. His eyes burned. "You didn't give me a life," he said. "You just slowed down my death." Marco's face twisted. He hit Lorenzo again. This time it was a punch, sharp, vicious, to the ribs. Lorenzo grunted, his shoulders bowing for a second under the impact. He didn't make a sound beyond that. He swallowed it, buried it, forced himself upright again. Ava's vision blurred with tears. Stop hurting him, Marco glanced at her. Why? Pain's the only language he was ever fluent in. He understands loyalty, she shot back. You just don't like where his loyalty went. Nico's gaze flicked toward her, curious. Marco's eyes narrowed. You think you understand loyalty? He asked. You met him over a counter. You know nothing about this world. Maybe, she said. But I know he's not the one who lost anything here. You are. Marco straightened. Is that so? You lost your best man, she said. He didn't lose you. You think that's weakness. I think that's proof he outgrew you. For a moment, Marco just stared at her. Then he laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh. It was sharp, humorless, echoing off the metal walls. You hear that, Nico? He said. The girl thinks she's found herself a hero. Nico didn't smile. Ava noticed that. Marco's amusement cooled quickly. Let me explain something to you, Ava, he said, voice almost gentle. Men like Lorenzo don't get heroes' endings. They get forgotten. Buried. They exist to be useful, and when they stop being useful, they are replaced. He turned back to Lorenzo. You are no longer useful. Angelo shifted. Boss, just say the word. We can end this now. Ava's breath strangled. Lorenzo looked at Marco. You kill her, he said quietly. You make a martyr out of a barista. You kill me, you lose the man who knows where all your bodies are buried. Marco's smile returned, thin and cruel. I'm not worried about the bodies, he said. I'm worried about the living ones who might get ideas. He grabbed Lorenzo by the hair, forcing his head up. I made you what you are, boy, he said. I can unmake you. Something inside Ava snapped. Then you're dumber than I thought, she said. The room went silent again. Marco turned very slowly. What did you say? He asked. Her heart slammed against her ribs, but she didn't stop. You heard me. If you kill him, you don't fix your problem. You prove it. Marco's eyes iced over. Enlighten me. You're afraid, Ava said. A murmur rippled through the men. Marco's expression didn't change. Careful, she swallowed but pressed on. You're afraid because if he can walk away, others might too. If he can choose something better than you, they might start wondering if they can, too. Killing him doesn't make that go away. It just confirms what they already suspect. Marco studied her quietly, interest mingling with irritation. And your solution? Let him go, she said. Lorenzo snapped his head toward her. Ava, she cut him off. Let him go. Let us go. Make it look like you exiled him for disobedience. Tell everyone he's a traitor. Tell them he ran. You keep your power. Your story. Your fear. Nobody has to know you lost control. Angelo scoffed. You want us to just let you walk out of here? I want you to pick the option that doesn't blow up in your face, she said. Marco's gaze flicked to Nico. What do you think? Nico hesitated, then stepped forward, eyes on Lorenzo. He's done more for this family than anyone in this room besides you, he said slowly. Killing him sends a message, sure. But she's not wrong. It also says working hard doesn't matter. That might not be the message you want to send. Angelo glared. You'd let him walk after this? After he spit in the boss's face? I said nothing about letting him walk, Nico replied. I'm saying there are more useful ways to end this than painting the floor with him and some civilian. Something electric shifted in the room. A crack in the armor. Marco's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Ava's pulse jumped. You want exile? Marco asked her. You think running will save you? No, she said honestly. I think it gives us a chance, and it gives you what you care about most, control over the story. Marco's gaze hardened. You have a lot of opinions for someone whose life is hanging by a thread. I'm here because your best man decided I was worth dying for, she said. You call it a weakness, I call it leverage. Lorenzo stared at her like he'd never seen anything like her in his life. Marco went quiet. The silence stretched. Finally, he sighed, stepping back from Lorenzo. You know what I hate? He said softly. Wasting potential. Lorenzo here was supposed to be my legacy. My proof that I could make something sharp out of nothing. He looked at Ava. You want exile? You want to walk? Fine. I'll give you a choice. Her stomach twisted. What choice? I let one of you live, Marco said. Not both, the world narrowed. Ava's breath stopped. You, Marco said, pointing at her, or him. He glanced at Lorenzo. You decide, right now. That's not a choice, Lorenzo snapped. You're just trying to make us suffer. Of course I am, Marco said calmly. Choices should hurt. That's how you know they matter. He looked at Ava. Well, her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear anything else. If she said herself, Lorenzo would never forgive her. If she said him, she'd be condemning herself. There was no way to win. That was the point. Tears burned at the back of her eyes, but she kept her expression steady. Lorenzo shook his head. Don't answer him. He's just playing with you. He will kill one of you either way, Marco said. I'm giving you a chance to pick who. Ava swallowed hard. She thought of Lorenzo in the cafe, quiet and tired. Lorenzo in the alley, lowering the gun. Lorenzo in the safe house, hands shaking in the dark. Lorenzo in her arms, finally allowing himself to want something just for him. She thought of the life she'd had before him, small, safe, lonely. And the life she might have had after, if she survived. She lifted her chin. Fine, she said, voice shaking. I pick. Lorenzo's eyes went wide. Ava, no, I pick him, she said, cutting him off. The room froze. Marco smiled slowly. Of course you do, she met Lorenzo's gaze. You get to live, she whispered. You get out. You do something good with it. You don't waste it. He shook his head violently. No, I'm not living without you. You weren't supposed to live this long at all, she said, tears slipping free now. You told me that yourself. You think I'm going to sit here and pretend I matter less than that? You saved me. Let me save you back. He strained against his restraints, fury and grief carving hard lines into his face. I won't let him. Marco held up a hand. You know, he said, I expected begging. Screaming. Some pathetic lovers bargaining. This is almost entertaining. He walked over to Angelo and held out his hand. Angelo placed a gun in his palm. Marco walked back to Ava. Stopped a few feet away. Lorenzo's body went wild, fighting invisible restraints, leaning forward so hard it looked like he might break his own shoulders. Marco, please, don't do this. Kill me instead. Leave her out of it. She's innocent. Marco looked at him, amused. Funny, that's exactly what she just tried to say about you. He lifted the gun slowly. Ava's heart stopped. Everything felt far away, like she was underwater. The warehouse, the men, the sounds, all blurred at the edges. Lorenzo's voice cut through it. Raw. Desperate. Ava, look at me, she did. His eyes were wild. Shining. Broken and burning all at once. I love you, he said. Her breath caught. I should have said it sooner, he rasped. I should have said it every morning. Every night. Every second since that day with the change. If you die because of me, I don't die because of you, she whispered fiercely. I die because of him, and if this is it, her throat tightened. I'm glad I met you first, Marco's patience snapped. Enough, he raised the gun. Ava closed her eyes. A shot rang out. She flinched, but there was no impact. No pain. When she opened her eyes, Marco was stumbling backward, shock written across his face. Blood spread slowly across the front of his shirt. Behind him, Nico stood with his own gun raised. Smoke curled lazily from the barrel. The entire warehouse froze. Nico's face was calm. Too calm. His eyes flicked from Marco to Lorenzo. You were right, Nico said quietly. Killing him would have been a waste. Marco stared at him, betrayal etched into every line. Nico, you, his words turned into a wet cough as his legs buckled. He hit the floor hard. Chaos erupted. Angelo shouted, reaching for his gun. Another man grabbed for Nico. Someone yelled Lorenzo's name. Someone else screamed. Ava threw herself sideways as bodies collided, shots fired, shouts overlapping. The world became sound and motion and terror. Hands grabbed her, but this time it was Lorenzo's. Somehow, in the chaos, he'd gotten free. She didn't know if someone had cut his ties or he'd ripped them himself. He pulled her toward the side exit. Move, gunshots cracked behind them. Nico yelled, go, get out, another shot answered him. They ran. Through a door. Down a narrow hall. Out into the rain. The storm had eased, but the ground was still slick. Ava nearly slipped. Lorenzo's arm locked around her, holding her upright. Behind them, the warehouse roared with shouts and distant gunfire. In front of them, the dark street. The open city. The unknown. We're not safe yet, Lorenzo panted. But we're not dead, that's a start. Ava clung to him, breath burning in her lungs. Where do we go? She whispered. He glanced once at the warehouse, then back at her. His eyes were wild and alive. Anywhere that isn't here, he said. Anywhere we can start over. He grabbed her hand. Together, they ran into the night. 6 months later, the world was quieter. Ava stood behind the counter of a tiny cafe tucked between a laundromat and a dusty antique shop on the edge of a small coastal town. The morning sun filtered through the windows, warm and golden, washing the place in a soft glow. The sign on the door read, OPEN, fresh coffee and amp. Quiet mornings, she liked that. Quiet mornings. They had become the most precious thing in her life. A bell chimed as the door closed behind the last early customer. She wiped down the counter, savoring the simple rhythm of the work. No shouting. No sirens. No footsteps running down old warehouse floors. Just coffee. And calm. The door to the back room swung open. "Place is empty," Lorenzo said, stepping out. Ava turned, and her chest still squeezed the way it had the first time she saw him in her cafe months ago. Except this time, he wasn't a stranger in a dark coat with secrets in his eyes. He was hers. His hair was longer now, a little messier. He'd grown a beard that made him look less like a weapon and more like a man who finally slept indoors every night. He wore jeans and a plain black shirt, sleeves rolled up. No holster. No blood. No shadows dragging behind him. Just Lorenzo. "You did the inventory?" she asked. He nodded, holding up a clipboard. "We're running low on beans. I'll pick some up after lunch." He said it casually. Like going out to buy coffee beans wasn't something that once could have gotten him killed. Like he hadn't lived a lifetime with eyes always scanning for danger. He crossed the room and leaned against the counter, watching her. "You okay?" he asked, as he did every day. Ava smiled softly. "Yeah, you?" His eyes warmed. "Never been better." He cupped her cheek gently, thumb brushing her skin. The touch was soft, familiar, grounding. She leaned into it, closing her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the quiet. "You slept," she murmured. "Did you notice?" He huffed a tiny laugh. "Yeah, first time in 3 nights." She looked at him carefully. "Nightmares, not as often," he admitted. "Not as sharp, they're fading." "Good." He brushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "You help with that." She placed her hand over his. "We help each other." He kissed her forehead, soft, slow, then moved to fix one of the chairs a customer had left askew. This was their life now. Small. Quiet. Intentional. And she loved it. But the shadows hadn't vanished completely. They just lived farther away. Every loud noise still made Ava flinch. Every unexpected knock made Lorenzo tense. They still walked home a different route every night, still avoided cameras where they could, still locked both cafe doors before counting the register. They weren't free. Not completely. But they were alive. And that was more than they once dared hope. Around noon, a man came in, a traveler, passing through. He wore a jacket damp from fog and carried a backpack with faded patches. Ava greeted him with her usual warm smile. He ordered a cappuccino and took a seat by the window. When he left, he dropped a tip into the jar, far more than the price of the drink. Ava frowned. "Hey, sir, you forgot," but the door had already closed, the bell chiming as he disappeared into the street. She reached into the jar to pull the bill out. $100 note. Her brows knit. Slipped beneath it was a folded piece of paper. Her pulse stumbled. "Lorenzo," she whispered. He looked up instantly. She handed him the note. His eyes scanned it. A single line written in unfamiliar handwriting, "Tell Lorenzo Vale he hides better than most." A chill ran up her spine. She swallowed hard. What does that mean? Lorenzo unfolded the paper fully. There was a second line, one she hadn't seen. His breath caught. Ava reached for him, panic rising. "Lorenzo, what?" He turned the paper so she could see. In crisp handwriting, "Debt paid. We don't hunt ghosts." Ava covered her mouth. Marco?" she whispered. Lorenzo shook his head slowly. "No, he's dead. This must be whoever took his place." Her heartbeat hammered. "Does it mean it's over?" He folded the paper carefully, like it was something precious, and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Then he stepped close and pulled her into his arms. She melted against him, her fingers curling into his shirt. "I think," he murmured, voice thick, "it means they're letting us live." Eva trembled once, a small sob slipping free, relief mixing with months of fear. Lorenzo held her tighter, his chin resting gently on her head. After a long moment, she whispered, "Do you believe we're really free now?" He kissed her hair, soft and steady. "No," he said honestly. "Not completely." He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. But for the first time, his voice softened. "I believe we have a future anyway," she smiled, tears glistening. Together, they turned the cafe's sign to closed, locked hands, and stepped outside into the sunlight. The door clicked shut behind them. And for the first time in their lives, they walked toward a future they chose, not one chosen for them.